sometimes it's hardest, well, always it's hardest, if these events or these people are very emotional with us. I realize that a number of the changes that you're going through are going to be very emotional for you. And I know that it's difficult when our emotions are in play, because our emotions are so powerful. This is my mom and dad. Aren't they cute? Yes, they are. My mom is teeny tiny. She weighs maybe 112 pounds. And she's had back problems for maybe 30 years now. And she has the kind of back problems where she gets these spasms in the center of her back, and they just grab a hold of her back so hard, it's just like crunch her to her knees. And they, we've seen so many doctors, and nobody can find a solution. And the only thing she can do is get her into the emergency room, and they shoot her up with morphine, because that's the only thing that will fix it. In fact, she travels, she has to carry a letter with her that says it's okay to do this, because they don't like to give you morphine. In fact, if they do give you morphine, then they think that you're a what? They think you're a drug addict. So not only do you have this crippling back pain, but you're being treated by the medical establishment like a drug addict. So a couple of years ago, we found a doctor that looked at the stability of her whole back and said, it's kind of like a house of cards. And so they were going to fuse lower back, L4, L5, and S1. And we had hoped, although they never promised, that would add some stability to the rest of her back. So we're pretty encouraged about that. But in order to improve the efficacy of the medication, she could not have any pain medication for 1 month prior to surgery. How did that make that month? This is not fun. Not fun. As a matter of fact, in the final week before surgery, 3 times that week, my mom was in the emergency room. The last time was on Sunday night. Now, we had arrived there to be with them for surgery on Monday morning. And we're there in the evening, and all of a sudden my mom's back started to spasm. And it's part of it's the anxiety, and you got the surgery coming up, and you see this big steel bracket going to go on her back, and so her back starts to spasm. And they think, well, then they're going to postpone the surgery. And then, we'll have to go a longer period of time, and that's going to be another problem. So what I found is that if I held my mom, and if I could hold her tight enough, and if I could hold the trigger points in her back, then I could keep her back from spasming. So my dad and I took turns holding my mom. At one point, Patty and I were standing in the kitchen. My mom and dad were in the bedroom, and we heard giggling in the bedroom. And back apparently doesn't hurt that bad. He says, "What's that giggling about?" Mom said, "Well, your dad just farted." You can only control so many muscles at one time. You got to be careful not to go over that. It's dangerous. That's the only fun thing about that evening. So I want you to come forward with me to the following morning. It's 6:30 in the morning. My mom is laying there, 67 years old, 112 pounds soaking wet, scared to death. They're going to put this huge steel bracket in her back. We'd just been in the emergency room till like 2 o'clock the night before. And the doctor came in. Now, this doctor apparently is a very good surgeon, but I had heard that he didn't have a particularly good bedside manner. So I'm already a little bit tweaked. And the first thing he did is he came in, he walked in, and he put his foot on the end of my mom's bed. To me, that was sort of like marking his territory. Ugh. I'm a little tweaked. So he starts going through the chart and sees all these different things. And my dad finally says he probably should tell him what's going on with the emergency room. And he says, "We've been in the emergency room 3 times in this past week." Doctor looks down at the chart. He says, "Now look, I see here you've had 3 children. I know you had a sinus problem where they stuck a number 10 gauge needle through the inside of your gums up into your sinuses. But you have never experienced pain like this before. And if every time you experience a little pain, you're going to show up in the emergency room, maybe we shouldn't even do this surgery." Now, how do I feel at this point? How do you feel? I'm quite certain that I can become an instant plastic surgeon. Grab, twist! Man, I am really upset. Right? How many of you would feel similarly? If this was your mom? Yeah, because I'm giving out his phone number when we're done. But right at that time, I was studying the book that we're going to share with you when this is over. And for me, every time when I'm trying to learn something new, then the world tries to test me and say, no, you can't really do this. You can't. Let me just show you what control the world has over me. And so I started thinking back about this book, and this book is The Four Agreements. And the very first agreement there, and the idea of the four agreements is this, is that remember, you are who you are at your best when you're children. And the idea of the four agreements, these are four simple agreements that you can make to gain back that best part of yourself. It is a book you could read in an afternoon, but you could study it for a lifetime. The first agreement is this, is that to be impeccable with your word. Well, immediately, just like for all of you, when we start hearing things like that, we want to immediately, do we want to apply it to ourselves or to others? Yes. So immediately I started thinking about that doctor. What was he thinking to say that to my mom? What's wrong with that guy? And then I realized it wasn't about what he said to my mom. Because the idea of being impeccable with your words is to never use your words against yourself or others. Whose words were the real problem there? It's the words that I was saying to myself. It's that I was saying that he shouldn't be this way, that they shouldn't act this way, that for you, we shouldn't have this change. It would be easy to look outside of ourselves and look at all those other things, but to realize that the real problem is not what's going on out there, but it's how I'm talking to myself about it. Am I saying to myself the best thing that can happen is happening? No, I'm not. I'm resisting what is, and because of that, I could not be the best I needed to be for my mom at that moment. I couldn't, because I was resisting what was out there. And whatever you resist always does what? Whatever you resist persists. That's the way it works. If I had realized that this was my opportunity, that when he said that I could have understood, this guy is obviously upset. And I should have been sorry for him to say, gosh, you are a great surgeon, but boy, you have very little control of your emotions. And now it's our job to try to help you get in your happy place, because I don't want you to do surgery on my mom while you're not in your happy place. But unfortunately, I was so out of control, I couldn't say that until later on to talk with the nurse. The next agreement is this. Now, I hesitate to even bring this one up because it's, I'm sure it's not a problem for any of you, but since there are four of them, we probably shouldn't skip any. The next agreement is simply this. There's no problem at all, right? But no, none of you have a problem. We don't ever take anything personally, do we? No, certainly not. No, certainly not. But let me explain it from this perspective. First off, sometimes people will introduce me as a motivational speaker. The reality is, when I get to listen to a great motivational speaker, I like to sit right close to the door. Because I don't like those people who say, I want you to wake up in the morning and pat yourself on the head and tell yourself you're wonderful. Shut up. Pat you right in the face. I don't want to be told that. But if I can understand how the way that I'm seeing the world is delusional, then I'm willing to let go, because I realize it's just an illusion. Now, how many of you here in this room are delusional? All of us. We're all delusional. It's whether or not you like your delusion and it's working for you, right? Because none of you see the world accurately. None of us do. The reason not to take anything personally is this. Nothing others do is because of you. Nothing others do is because of you. It's all because of them. It's all because of the way that they see their world. You're just a little teeny tiny part of it. Whatever their story is that's going on behind the scenes and all that, it says it, that's all separate. It's not because of you. It's just because of them. The next agreements are these. One is to never assume anything, because you don't know. You don't know. If I did not assume, then I would start asking questions. I think part of what's changing for you is the opportunity to ask questions directly, to really find out, to not have it filtered through the system of each of the people that are out there. Because remember this, that every communication is a deletion, a distortion, or a misrepresentation of something. It's not very good, is it? But is it true? Yeah, we've all played that game where we start over here and we tell a story at this, I tell Vincent a story and then he tells Margie the story and it starts moving around the table, and by the time it gets over here to Pine, is it the same story? And that's an entirely different story, isn't it? So part of what's happening for you is the opportunity to communicate directly so that you get that immediate feedback about what goes on. But the most important person to communicate with well is you. So don't assume anything. Next is to always do your best. You know, some days my best is pretty darn good. Other days my best sort of sucks. But you know what? If I always gear towards my lowest days, then I'm never going to make the effort to go above and beyond to do exceptional things. So it's just say every day at this moment, I am doing the very best I possibly can. Because my goal is to astonish you. My goal is to blow your mind. Because that's the only way that'll generate the stories that we need to grow the business. And it's also the only way I'm going to get through all of those filters that we tend to have. Because we all have filters. So how do we begin to do this for ourselves? We begin to do it by realizing that we're the ones that generate the challenges. That to realize, as Deepak said, remember, the best thing that can happen is happening right now.